Hi, you guys. I just wanted to make a quick little explanation for you about your rough draft, which is due tomorrow. So I just wanted to walk you through my sample one more time to make sure everybody's kind of on the same page. Remember, it's just a rough draft, so you only have to have the first page done. The more you have, the more feedback I can give you, but the requirement is only to have page one done. So we're just going to walk through this really quickly and kind of talk about what you need to have done, and then you can send me questions if you have them. So first of all, remember you need the big header, which happens when you double click at the top, and this lovely thing will show up that says first page header. And you click different first page, make sure this box is checked, and then you write a line up here at the top where you do your alignment, and then you type in your name and the number one. And then when you go to your next page, it will show the same header at the top, and you just have to go up and edit and change the page to two and then three if you have more pages. And then, of course, your usual double-spaced MLA formatted, information here with your name, my name, the class, and then the date written out. Then your title goes in the center, and it is just in Times New Roman 12-point font. It is not in bold. It's not underlined. It's not in italics. Nothing fancy. Okay. You can come up with a really creative title if you want, or you can just call it the name of the food chain that you've chosen. Whatever works for you makes me happy. You can call it research paper. I'm good either way. Just make sure you give it a title. Your introduction is going to start out pretty broad, and then it narrows down to whatever food chain you are saying is the best option for a family of four. And I did the same thing here by talking about going to Busch Gardens as opposed to some of the other options for vacations like camping or visiting relatives or Disney World. And then you narrow it down to your thesis statement. You don't put any information here. You don't start explaining why it's the best option. You just put your thesis where you say, this is the best option. Then your first paragraph after that is probably going to be you starting to explain, obviously, why it's the best option. I started with cost. It depends on what you did your research kind of based on. But if you did cost, it's a great place to start because that's really something, obviously, that your reader would be thinking about. So you go on and you explain, the different costs here for the things involved in your food chain. You can introduce other food chains and say why they are more expensive, or maybe they're not as expensive, but in the long run, they're more expensive because you have to pay more environmentally, let's say metaphorically, or you have to pay more for health costs later or something like that. And then you go on maybe, and for your next paragraph, of course, I explain some other like factors that make Busch Gardens better than Disney World and other places. So I talked about like the history. You could certainly go on then and start structuring it by talking about it being better because of convenience or because the food is actually healthier that you for the one that you've chosen. Whatever your reasons happen to be. Remember along the way that you're going to be working in your research. So you can see that I've got right here a reference to Billy Bob Jenkins and his article that was on a website. And then farther down, I've paraphrased from a website. So I've got the in text citation here in parentheses. And so then you go on in your next paragraph. Again, maybe you want to show like why the other food chains are negative versus why yours is so positive to flesh your paper out a little bit. If you've got lots of positive things about your food chain, certainly don't have to bring in the others. It does not have to be an argumentative paper at all. I structured mine as argumentative, but you don't have to do that, so don't feel obligated to. And then the last thing, of course, is your conclusion. And when you conclude, you want to sum up all of your ideas with different words. You don't want to repeat your thesis word for word or anything like that. And then you get down to the bottom and you want to leave your reader with something to think about that's not a question because they can't respond to you. They're reading a paper, you're not having a conversation. So you want to get to the end and leave them with something. So I said, another reason why people should choose Busch Gardens, I sum up my ideas. And then the last thing I say is mouse ears are cool, which of course is a reference to Florida and Disney World, but living is cooler because I have talked about how terrible Florida is throughout this whole thing. So you come up with some sort of, great little, I call it putting a bow on it, put a bow on it phrase there to wrap up your whole paper and you're done. Now, of course, that's the whole paper. You might not get to the end for tomorrow, but next week you'll be working on editing your rough drafts and then finishing your final draft. So it's good to kind of have that in mind. I am tweaking the creative element, as you probably figured out from today's question, because we're doing remote learning. And so you'll hear more from me about that next week, along with an explanation about how to use Prezi. So keep your eyes peeled for that. If you've got questions on your rough draft, please reach out to me through Classroom, through Remind, however you want to email, and I will do my best to answer them as much as I can. But really just try your best. That's all I'm asking. So please submit something tomorrow so I can give you feedback.